15 steps. That's what I want us to think about this morning. 15 steps. And that's too many, isn't it? And I'm not talking about a staircase here. I'm talking about when you're trying to get yourself organized or find yourself happiness, you're looking for the 3 keys to a brighter future, or the 4 steps to better health, the 2 ingredients to a fabulous love life. 2, 3, 4, that much we can handle. That's a journey we can take without getting lost along the way. But 15, that's too many. 15 steps. I asked our director of music ministry, John Albrecht, to help me make this point this morning. I asked him to give us each a little musical test to see how well we would do, how far we could go before we got lost. John?
Thank you, Steve. What we're going to do is something called melodic sing-back. And some of you, if you've had a chance to sing in a choir, may have done this as part of your choir audition. I'll play a very brief pattern on the piano, and then you get to echo it back on the syllable do. Here's how it works. If I play, then you all would sing do, do, do. All right, so we'll do some of those. The challenge is they will continue to get longer and more complicated, and you need to be very honest. If you miss a note or if you don't make it through to the end of the pattern, then you need to drop out for the next repetition, okay? All right. Here's the first one. Do, do, do. Do, do, do. Do, 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 do. I get a do-over. Here we go. I heard a lot of fake notes on that second note. Almost. Thank you very much.
So, how'd you do? How far did you make it? How many steps, musical steps along the way before you got lost? Even our music scholars faltered along the way, and I can verify that they blew it at the first service as well. And that's us. Sooner or later, it becomes too much. Life, that is. Sooner or later, it gets too complicated, too many steps, too many stresses, too much pressure, too many circumstances beyond our control, and we get lost. And that's when we look for help. Eugene Peterson, translator of the Message that I read from with the children's sermon this morning, writes that this psalm makes it clear that Israel had 2 chief sources from where they were tempted to seek help in times when they were lost. First, on their way to Zion, God's holy hill, those pilgrims couldn't help but notice other hills, other high places, places containing shrines to other gods, Asherah poles where unspeakable sacrifices took place to placate fearsome and vengeful gods. Is that where my help will come? Second, the pilgrims turned their gaze higher still to the heavens, the sun, the Egyptian god, the moon, the god of the Chaldeans, the stars, studied by ancient astrologers to discern their messages and their impact on the future. Is that where my help will come? Michael Flooding writes, "Things haven't changed much. We still look to the high places for help. Some climb the corporate ladder and aspire to the boardrooms of the 37th floor. Many look for the help at Capitol Hill to address societal ills up there in Washington or Moscow, or Tokyo or Beijing. Huge numbers of people are starstruck by astronomical athletic salaries. And everyone with an IRA or 401k loves the Dow Jones and NASDAQ indices as long as they go up. The high places have their allure, and many place the trust of their life there. But the psalmist takes us in another direction, to a God big enough to trust and a God personal enough to care. The one who keeps you will not slumber. The Lord is your keeper. God will keep your life. This is the one that we need to look to, the maker of heaven and earth, the God not so much of the high places, but the one beside us, even on the road as we make the journey. Now, we might wish it were easier. We might wish that the God who keeps us would simply gather us up into a small and secure circle of family and friends, surrounded by safety and warmth. If that were the case, then our goals might be best summed up by that old song which pictures a cottage small and a cozy room populated by just Molly and me and baby makes three. But the song running through the biblical stories of God's people is more Willie Nelson crooning "On the Road Again." Jesus called his followers to an on the road again life. The call of Jesus was never gather around me or even listen to me, but rather follow me. Jesus' call is one to take up the life of the traveler, of the sojourner. And travel involves change. And change involves risk. And risk involves loss. Just ask those making the pilgrimage to Jerusalem 3 times a year. Just ask the man beset by bandits on the road out of Jericho. Just ask the person sitting next to you in the pew this morning. Journeys involve too many steps. Life gets complicated. Travelers get lost. The movie Lion, nominated this past year for Best Picture, tells the true story of Saru Brierley, lost as a child on the streets of Calcutta and eventually adopted by an Australian couple who gave him a loving home, a loyal family, a bright future. And that is the case when we first meet him in the movie, a handsome, accomplished young man who is ready to follow his dreams in the world. But at a party with some friends, one of whom is from India, he catches sight of a homemade Indian pastry, the sight and smell of which suddenly transports him back to his childhood, to the streets of his home, to the family that he lost, to the life that he lost so long ago. And just like that, he himself is lost. He's standing in a nice apartment. He's surrounded by friends, a loving girlfriend, good career, a future all laid out, but he is lost. Lost in his own heart, just as surely as if he was a child alone on the streets of Calcutta again. And the story of his long and painful journey to find himself again begins. His story is utterly unique, but that feeling, it seems to me, is familiar to many of us. Lost, even when surrounded by familiar faces and places. You know what it's like? Alone in a crowd, marooned in your own thoughts and sadness, heartsick, with little idea how to explain it to yourself, much less anybody else. It's an overwhelming grief, a plummeting disappointment, a soul-sick feeling. You've collapsed on the road to Jericho, afflicted and helpless. From where shall my help come? Years ago, I performed a wedding for a couple who I knew had been married previously. I had some sense that they had a complicated past. After the ceremony was over, I went to sign the wedding license and discovered on the form that this was her third marriage and his fifth marriage. I felt a bit duped. They hadn't told me about all of this past, all the bends in the road of their life journeys that they had traveled. Of course, I don't know that I really asked. Years later, I'm sitting in my office of my next call, a different church, when the phone rings. It was this couple. Somehow they had found me in my new place, the place where my journey of ministry had taken me. They said that they just wanted to call me to thank me again on their 10th anniversary for such a wonderful wedding. I don't know that I've ever had a more gratifying or humbling experience in ministry. It brought me to my knees. This is what God can do. These are the hurts that God can heal. This is the future that God can form from a difficult and complicated past. The hurting were healed, the lost were found, the lonely were loved back to life, and I was so privileged to be even a small part of that. We make harrowing journeys in our lives, ascending the mountaintops of challenge and ecstasy and dropping down into the valleys, some with still waters, but others through the shadow of death. Sometimes we just try to put one foot in front of another along a long, dusty road. Disease, divorce, relocation, loss, triumph, disaster, transition, death. All of these we meet along the way of our life's journey. And something else, too, something haunting and hard to define, an uncertainty of ourselves, of who we really are, where is our place, what is our work in the world. It makes us walk always with uncertainty, never knowing when we might feel lost yet again. But according to the psalmist, we can walk with confidence when we remember the traveler's psalm and the one along the way on our journey. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. This is the one who made you, and this is the one who keeps you, who offers you shade along the way, who keeps you from evil, who keeps you from being lost, who keeps your life, who keeps you. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore. Step by step by step, we're on the road again, one foot in front of the other, 15 steps up the stairs to the holy place we're headed. Too many steps to know the way ourselves. But we are guided, and we are shaded, we are protected, and we are aided. We are steered and secured by our Maker, our Creator, our faithful traveling companion who is always beside us along the way.